So I'm doing a little fur put up here, and I was just going to show. I get questions about pressure fleshing and how hard that is on the hide, or if that damages the hide or anything. And I was going to show you, kind of point out here. Typically, everything I flesh from those bobcats, otter, beaver, coyotes. I got my foxes over there. Everything I do with a pressure washer, 3,000 psi pressure washer with an orbiting tip, and for the most part, on good quality prime fur, it's not an issue, as long as you keep the tip moving and you don't leave, you don't leave the tip in one place. And you can see, I mean, this isn't a big coon, but it's a pretty nice prime coon. I didn't have any issues at all. One thing I'll run into on occasion with maybe fur that's not quite fully prime, or sometimes with some young fur, a young smaller animal, or something that if I leave the nozzle in one place too long, you kind of see, and some of this is dirt through here, but you can see here on the outskirts, that is the hair follicle, and it'll actually, you can see where it'll start thinning that hide out so much that the tips of the hair follicles are showing through. And I don't know if you could see that right there. You can kind of see it on that outside edge. Again, this is dirt, I apologize for that, but you can also see some of the hairs. That is obviously something that you don't want, but like I said, in general, good, nice, big prime coons, I do not have that problem. Beavers and otters especially not, and even the bobcats, and you saw me fleshing the foxes. As long as you keep that, and you can kind of manage how closely you keep the tip from the hide itself. And then also, you always keep that thing moving, so you don't keep it in one spot, because it will cut a hole in a hide. But anyway, just want to kind of point that out. So you can see here, I'm getting ready to pressure wash. This is a red fox. I get a lot of questions about pressure washing any kind of animals, any kind of fur. And now granted, pressure washing on a fox or a bobcat could really be a little bit of overkill. Most of them, there's not a whole lot of fleshing that needs to be done, but I like it's just, that's how I'm fleshing everything else, and it doesn't take long. I've already got my setup like it is. You can see I've got a full suit on with an old pair of waders, heavy rain jacket, and a face shield because it is dirty. And you see I kind of try to get the head a little bit. The one thing about foxes, red or gray, is they don't fit all the way down on the beam like some of the more broader animals. So you kind of have to just kind of make do with that. But another thing I like about the pressure washing, you see here I'm fixing to pressure wash the outside of it. Pressure wash the beam so that my flesh side stays clean. But then I'm going to pressure wash any blood and mud that's in the fur really well about getting that out of there. So that's another thing that I like about it. Usually with most of my furs, once I get finished with the hide side, I'll flip them over, rinse off that fur side, and make sure they're nice and clean, and then get on to the next one. So I'll here in a minute, you'll also see doing a gray fox. It's basically the same thing. Like I say, I just, I'll turn inside out, flesh it, and turn right side out. One of the pluses, one of the things that I found that works well with the pressure washer as well is, if you've got a hide that gets a little bit dry, or like if I freeze all of my fur during the season, and then after season I'll start putting fur up. There's times when, for whatever reason, they stay in there longer than you would have expected, longer than you anticipated. You see there, I squeegee that fur out, and then I pop it a little bit from both ends to kind of get any water out of the fur, and that does a pretty good job of trying to get all the excess water out of the fur. But anyway, like on this right here, if there was a freezer burn spot or a dried out spot where for whatever reason that hide got a little bit hard, and that pressure washer will just penetrate that hide and rehydrate it, and you'd never know that there was a a freezer burn spot on there. So that's another thing that I like about the pressure washer. So it's like I say, it's got its pros and cons, and you know anybody with a good knife could probably do just as well and just as quick, if not quicker. But this is kind of how I've adapted my style, and it's what I use, and it works. So hope this was helpful to you. So with my pressure washer flushing, I wind up with damp hides. I try to pop them out. You saw in the video, try to pop them out and get them as dry as possible. But there's still, particularly coyotes and foxes, I mean, there's still a lot of moisture. So I like to use something other than a solid board, if I can. Now I'm not really tied to any specific thing. I've got some solid. This is a solid coyote board. It's just a pine board that I made. But I'll use whatever I got at hand. I don't have a lot of any stretchers except for coons. I got a lot of coon stretchers, but anyway, and the way I just pull stuff out of the freezer as it comes, I'm constantly doing a little bit of everything versus all one species at the time. But anyway, so I made this one, and I need to make a few more, but I like it pretty well. There's some companies that'll sell an adjustable stretcher, bobcats and coyote stretcher, that they'll be all wood, but they'll have a adjustment down here on the bottom where you can adjust the width. And so I just took kind of the same philosophy, and I cut down, or I didn't cut it down, I actually cut off I had a large coon stretcher, and I cut it off. I just cut the inside off. So I took actually probably one of the stretchers just like this, and I just cut this inside portion off and left probably 2 inches. So this is these are just 1x4 boards that are making up kind of my base area. These are just 1x4s. And so I left enough wire that I could thread the base of the wire, and so that's actually what I did. I drilled holes in each of these boards. I cut them off to where I left, a foot, 12 inches at the bottom hole. I cut the rest of them off. I don't know exactly how long they are, but I can tell you. So they're about 45 inches long, not quite 4 feet tall. And I cut the inside out, cut them down, sanded them down smooth so that I didn't have anything to catch fur on. And then like I said, I threaded these portions of the wire stretcher, and I've just got wing nuts that have attached it on here. It was still floppy and loose. I tried to kind of router me a seam along this edge that this wire would fit in just right. It didn't quite work out that way, but so I just electrical taped that, and it's holding fine. And then I've got my tail board here in the center. So this actually works out really good for coyotes because they're typically long. I will put bobcats on here too, particularly a large bobcat, and what I'll do, because a lot of times the bobcats, unless it's a really large one, it won't reach down to the tail board. So I'll just take a piece of cardboard here and tack it on here in the middle wherever I need to with nails, and then use my push pins to hold out the tail to make sure it stays flat and is able to dry. And then otherwise I just tack right along the edges, and it lets me keep good air circulation and airflow through the stretcher, and you know, lets the fur dry some as well as the hide. And then, like I say, I always keep a let me give you a little rundown here. My fur shed is absolutely nothing fancy. It's more of a multi-purpose everything shed than a fur shed, but I always keep a fan going in here. Not necessarily blowing directly on the furs. I may have it, you know, pointed off this way, so it's blowing air and filtering air throughout this room, but it's not blowing directly on the hides. If I've got just fur out or fur in, hides like otter, coons, beavers, I don't worry so much about it blowing directly on them, and usually I'll put it on oscillating where it's just kind of blowing along the whole room. But especially if I've got anything that needs to be turned, coyotes, bobcats, foxes, I'll keep it blowing but not on the hides, because I don't want to over dry those hides. So I'll keep the air circulating, the fan on. I'll keep those hides on there for about 24 hours. I'll usually board them in the evening and check them the following evening, and usually they're pretty dry, not over dry where it's hard to turn them, but they're dry enough that it works out good to turn them. So like I say, I'll do that, then continue. And if I want to put my fur, if I want to turn my fan on them at that point, it's no big deal. But that's a quick rundown. I got my little hanging area over there where I try to hang my furs as they're drying, and then I got my dried fur area back there, which I'm gonna have to expand some because I got plenty more furs to put up. But anyway, that's a quick rundown. I got stretchers and boards and everywhere, but that's a quick rundown. I had a question actually the other day about pressure washing coyotes in particular, and all of the fur that I put up is pressure washed. It's a little bit overkill on foxes and bobcats. Coyotes actually have a pretty tough flesh side, especially compared to bobcats and foxes. So knock on wood, I've never had an issue with pressure washing furs. Like I say, I keep a fan in to make sure that I can keep the air circulating and try to get them dried as fast as possible. But knock on wood, so far I haven't had any issues, so I'll let you know if I do.